Hello, everyone. I am excited to have a very special guest on today's show, the Today's Business Leaders podcast. It's Brandon Neely from Wealth Wisdom Financial Partners. And the reason I decided to have Brandon on today is I believe that as entrepreneurs and business owners, we unfortunately can create entrepreneurial poverty for ourselves. And something that Brandon is really passionate about and excellent is helping entrepreneurs really understand their finances and create a solid plan there. And so I'm excited to have that conversation and also learn a lot about his entrepreneurial journey. So we're going to dive in here and get started. And I'm excited to bring Brandon on here in just a moment. So welcome to the show, Brandon. I appreciate you taking time to be with us today. We've been connected for a while and never had this conversation, which makes me excited.
Yeah.
So I've been following you off and on for years here now, it feels like. And so I always like starting out the show with a simple question because that kind of gives people your origin story and helps us understand who you are. And so I'm curious, when did you first realize that you were an entrepreneur?
Probably, I was in the Marine Corps for a while, and I got out of the Marine Corps for misconduct, which is something like, I realized I don't like to follow rules, probably at that point. And then did various other things. We were actually church planters at one point, and it's just an entrepreneurial deal. And worked for the company, man, worked for some banks, and just realized, man, I need to do my own thing. Uh, and so I had the idea of starting a coffee shop and told my wife we're going to do this thing. And um, we jumped all into running a coffee shop, which is probably not the wisest move. Uh, but we became entrepreneurs when we left our cushy IT jobs and her job to step into this craziness.
Yeah.
That was 12, no, maybe 15 years ago with that first business.
Wow. Where did you start that at? The coffee shop? What location was it?
It was in Chicago. It was 2011. We started with the idea in 2008, which is the worst time to even think about starting a brick and mortar business. But we were starting it and launched and opened in March of 2020, or March of 2020 was when COVID hit.
Yeah.
March of 2011 was when Overflow opened.
Nice. I probably just missed you because I lived in Chicago from like '07 to or early in 2011. Where was it based out at? I'm curious what part of town.
We were in the South Loop of Chicago, so just south of downtown. Not too like we learned we weren't close to everything, and rent is insanely challenging in that area.
Yeah.
Well, one of the crazy things is I had to pay for the pier tax for Navy
Really?
Pier, and I was like literally 2.5 miles away because they said, "Oh, you benefit from this." I was like, "No,
That's
we
a
don't."
long way away from there for a city.
Yeah,
For that city.
yeah.
Wow. So how long did you run the coffee shop for?
So we opened in 2011, and then we sold it in 2018. We did not, and I make a big indicator um, that it was, what do you call it? Um, Not closed, but sold. Right, that's a very big difference. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
Did
yeah,
you?
my assistant, I didn't realize we were live, so my assistant is going to come and grab my phone so we can share it on my Facebook.
Oh,
So,
perfect. That'd be great.
yeah.
So are you still based in Chicago or are you somewhere else now?
So we moved actually. We moved from Chicago when we sold the business, and I might get into this. Um, so we sold the business because, and there's a whole like things where I learned entrepreneurial poverty, where I'm in the business I'm in now, is because I realized that I was not paying myself fairly.
Yeah.
I remember meeting my um, um, what was it, my lawyer, and he said, what I really would love is right. Well, he asked me, he's like, so how are you doing? And we said, we're paying off all of our debt. We're doing this. And he said, so how much are you paying yourself? And we realized that we weren't paying ourselves very much. We thought we were successful, which we were, to really start a business. There's another book by MJ DeMarco. He says, Millionaire Fastlane is the book. And in
Yeah.
that book, it
Great
says,
book.
um, if you want to be rich, don't start a coffee shop. And I read this, about 2 years ago. I was like, man, I wish I would have read that before I started this business. But I went into the business to make a difference in the world. Coffee is the most like it's a business that is like impacting slaves and all that kind of thing that is like negative, right?
Yeah.
And we really wanted to make a difference, so we bought ethical coffee, and we were all about community building. And so but and our business name was called Overflow, right? So the problem was with the Overflow of Fountain, the problem was is we realized we weren't taking care of ourselves. If we didn't take care of ourselves, we couldn't overflow to others, and that's one of the reasons we ended up pivoting and selling the business. Also, because running a coffee shop again is really difficult. I can eat ramen all day long as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. However, when you have kids, uh, things change a little bit. Priorities change,
Yeah.
uh, and so in 2018, literally, and I might share this. We had these policies, life insurance policies, that we call infinite banking policies, and that was
Mhm.
my savings that I could use. Um, and I was able to access the capital for an emergency or an opportunity. This in this case, it was an emergency, and literally, this is why we switched positions, moved. Um, it was 2017, I believe, and they had taken off the roof of the building to replace it, and
Yeah.
then there was a freak storm, 30-minute storm, and I remember going home at the gym because I was taking care of myself doing the exercise, and and my staff calls me, and I'm like running on the treadmill. I'm like, oh, I'll get it in a minute. And then he calls my wife next, and I was like, oh, this is important. He's calling both of us. Answer the phone, and he's like, you guys need to come in. The store is falling apart. I was like, what do you mean? We see a video, and literally, it's kind of like a hurricane. Our store is flooded, right? Whole totally flooded, and we had to access our policy to overcome that thing. What we
Yeah.
did not realize at the time of the flood is my wife was 2 months pregnant,
Wow.
right? And we're like, oh, wow. Anyway, um, we then decided after that, with the baby coming, that we needed to sell the business, which is hard, as you know, as a business owner.
Yeah.
Selling your baby is like, it's
Very
well,
difficult.
it's very difficult. You probably shouldn't do it if it's a legit baby.
Yeah.
Uh, this is not advice for that. Um, but your business is not your baby, right? And so
Yeah.
we made the change, and now I'm in this industry of all things.
Yeah. It sounds like you learned a ton in a short amount of years. I can relate to a lot of that because I've been through some pretty challenging things over the years. I've built and sold companies, um, and I've been through a lot of that. And what, as you were coming to, that accident happens, that storm comes, and it really knocks you out.
Hmm.
what were you thinking about, and what were the big like aha moments for you of like, man, I can't keep doing this, and why? Like, what were the indicators of you telling yourself, okay, if I keep going on this path, it's not going to work? Or,
Yeah.
what were the things that made you say, man, I've got to make a change? Because I think a lot of us get locked into like, just keep doing the same thing over and over, and we're hoping for better results, or we're hoping for a pivot or a big change, but we don't obviously always actually take the action or take the steps. And so what things came to mind that you had to work through, and then what were one if or multiple triggers that made you go, oh, we're going to
Yeah.
shift this direction, and here's the outcomes that I want to have in my next season as an entrepreneur?
Well, and it's always a moving target too, right? So we want to reverse engineer, start with the end in mind. What kind of business do you want? What kind of life do you want? Too many people aren't even thinking about it, and they are like martyrs in their business.
Yeah.
And I remember one example specifically. I had staff, and the staff would never. I mean, I swear to God, like how many grandmothers can die for one person, right? And this always she would call off. So I run a coffee shop. So if the staff person doesn't show up, I got to drink more coffee to keep up because I don't have another person.
Yeah.
I was drinking a lot of coffee. She was, I think, stealing. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I remember uh, going to the. I was like, man, this place is gonna kill me. And I went to the doctor and they said you're having an anxiety attack. I thought it was a heart attack, and they put me on lisinopril and all the stuff that they do. And I was like, this is not gonna define. I'm not gonna be killed by my business. And that was something I realized that I need to really again take care of yourself. That's why I love the profit first system, is because you're putting in those metrics to take care of you
Mhm.
first, and then you build around that, right? So as we are architects of our business, you start building the staff around it and things like that. But also I think I learned a lot of like, hey, you're fired. um, that's something I had to do a couple times. um, and I did not like that. But again, saying, okay, how do I best position, and knowing the failure rates of businesses is really high. Everybody is they think they're like the unicorn, and it's going to be different,
Yep.
right? But
It's not.
I I've seen the statistics. I see it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I live it, and I know that's why we're committed in the financial services industry of what I do, to say, okay, how can I best position my people that are influenced by me to be successful? And it's not oftentimes not even about the sales. It's not even about the marketing. It's so much deeper than that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember in my early 20s when I was running my construction company, which I ended up losing in the housing market crash. I remember having chest pain so bad that I fell down, and I thought I was having a heart attack too. And it was just stress and anxiety. And like I was technically healthy, I guess, but
Yeah.
maybe not in the stress end of things. And I definitely see way too many entrepreneurs, and I've experienced it too, who are literally killing themselves because they're unaware of a better path or model. There's definitely, because I know there was for me, there's
Yeah.
stubbornness and pride. We think we have to hold on to something, because it may be our only shot, or we attach our ego to our team size or the business we're in, or things like that. And one of the things that I've learned, and it sounds like you've walked this journey too, is that self-care is the ticket to seven figures and beyond. And like
Yeah.
people don't understand that you can only push yourself so hard. You have to, like you said, I love your example there of like, you have to have the overflow of abundance and good things in
Hmm.
your own life if you want that to pass on to your business, to your clients, to your team. And that's such a huge lesson to learn. And after I lost my first business is when I learned about profit first. So I'm curious, when did you start implementing that model for
Yeah.
yourself, and what was that like for you?
It definitely wasn't in the beginning of the coffee shop years. I'll tell you that. Um, Right, because we were living off of like the tips in the tip jar, and even over the past 10 years, I can tell you that our income is definitely more significant than it was back then. But I remember I was listening to Mike Michalowicz's podcast, and they said, "Hey, if you want a copy of the book, just write a review, and we'll send you a copy." So I was like, "Oh, that sounds awesome." I'm going to get a copy. I'll write a review. I'll get the book, and got a physical copy of the book. And my wife had mentioned she wanted it at some point, and so I wrapped the book under the Christmas tree and gave it to her, which that means it didn't cost me anything. And gave her the book, and she just loved it. And then we started implementing and realizing, that whole paying ourselves, we were doing some of the things. I mean, literally, I think we did all the things right
Hmm.
that we could. uh we did the Susie Orman books and all of that for financials,
Hmm.
but our biggest risk and our biggest investment was us, and we weren't taking care of us. That's part of why we really liked the infinite banking strategy,
Hmm.
because it at least was protecting our biggest risk and investment, which was us. So if I, for example, were to have died because of a heart attack or something, at least my wife would have been stabilized, and I still had a line of credit that I was able to use.
Hmm.
But really, the profit first system just came out of saying, okay, we've done this wrong, and let's start changing the 1% adjustments uh, in the last few years of the coffee shop.
Yeah. And I assume that definitely led you to a position where you actually could sell and somebody was attracted, able to buy it
Mhm.
from you. Because one of the things that I always share with entrepreneurs when I get to work with them or coach them or interact is if you're not paying yourself a reasonable salary,
Mhm.
then you're not actually running a business and nobody's going to
Yep.
buy it from you because you have to be able to replace yourself in that sale or when you step out of that role in the business and you have to be able to pay somebody. So if you're not paying yourself market rate for the roles you're filling, then you're totally, you're tricking yourself. And
Yeah.
for,
That's why the attorney asked that question and
yeah,
said, "What are you paying yourself?" Because if we were going to create a franchise,
yeah,
the franchise owner is going to want to get a
a
return.
paycheck. Yep, exactly. And profit first I think is pretty popular, and thanks to Mike McCullough's work and folks like you, and I've talked about it over the years. But for people that don't understand that system or process, can you break it down in just a couple minutes and give them the basics of how profit first works?
Yeah, it's kind of like the envelope system, if you ever heard of that, when we used to have cash back in the day,
Yeah.
and you would put it into different envelopes. I don't know who carries cash now, but um, what is interesting is, the business is always hungry and it's always going to want more, right?
Hmm.
Always, and a lot of times business owners are putting more into OpEx, right? Marketing, for example.
Hmm.
We will just keep putting money into marketing and not realizing and thinking about the 80/20 rule or any of that. So, profit first is just setting different buckets, right? So, instead of it all being one giant plate like Thanksgiving, we're
Hmm.
breaking it down into smaller plates. So, then you have to do different bank accounts. So, you run out of, and they call it TAPS, target allocation percentages. You run your, if it's a smaller business, 30% is your operation expense, right?
Hmm.
30%. And that means 50% is for you as the business owner if it's TAPS, 15% to taxes, 5% towards profit, right?
Yep.
It's amazing how many business owners I talk to that literally forget that some of that money that came through their hands isn't theirs. It's the IRS's. It's actually theirs, not theirs.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and and I think that oftentimes that's what gets them in trouble. And we have to realize, hey, well, put it into a tax hold account or things like that. Um, So it just is a cash flow management system that just helps us have good metrics.
Yeah. No, it's been super powerful for me. I started using it probably 10 or more years ago. I forget when the book came out, but when the book came out, I
Yeah.
had run something similar, but not as efficient. And I put that in place, and we used the exact model for 5 or 6 years. And as we've grown and scaled, we use the same principles and, continue
Yeah.
to follow the process. And I really love what that book teaches and the results that the people get from it. And so when you go in and you find somebody in that state of entrepreneurial poverty where they're working too much,
Mhm.
they're not making enough, they're going to burn out. What are the obviously implementing profit first is step probably and one of the initial steps. What are the other changes that you typically encourage your clients to make and the folks you're working with, and then what results do they see and how quick do they typically see results? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it totally ranges business to business, but in the ideal or in the different cases you've worked with folks, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've learned is we're all in the banking business, regardless of what industry you're in. We're all in the banking business. I mean, seriously, look at your balance sheet and P&Ls and see how much goes to credit card processing fees,
Yeah,
right? And just to say, for example, or I look at saying people are like doing real estate right now and they use a credit card to do a fix and flip and it's 22% interest or any of that stuff. I'm like,
yeah,
you realize you're working for a bank for 25% of your time, right?
yeah,
That's what I learned as running a coffee shop. I felt like there was two people that never showed up to work, and that was the banks and the IRS, right? They
yeah,
never showed up to work, but they always wanted some money. And I was like, shit, this is ridiculous.
yeah,
Um, and I think that I tell and I think about that as money's flowing through us. How do I capture it? That's why I love the infinite banking system again, is because I'm at least capturing it.
mhm,
I love the profit first system and the different banks that we put into. I just happen to use a life insurance policy as one of the banks, right?
mhm,
And then I'll turn around and use it. And I've used my policy. It's personally owned, but I used it to buy a house, down payment on a house. I just recently bought a commercial real estate building for my office, which I personally own the real estate. And then my business is paying me rent because
mhm.
I'm realizing not only am I in the financial services business, but I'm also in the real estate business and the banking business. And how do those things connect?
Yeah,
Right. um, that's the power of things and thinking bigger, reverse engineering again your life. That's what I ask people a lot. What do you want? Like what kind of life? Maybe you don't want a team of 30,
yeah,
right? Okay, then build a business that you like, and how do you get there?
yeah. No, that's definitely a good way of looking at it, because I know for many of the businesses I've started over the years and working with clients, I think we start with an ideal and then it very quickly gets lost because we don't have the model or framework or structure to actually achieve that,
Yeah.
and then we get trapped in our business. And so when you walk people through that process and they're defining the business and the lifestyle they want and the business is to support that, and then you help them put in profit first, you help them with infinite banking, you put in these tools and processes that let them capture more of that money that's flowing through them. What have been some of the stories or successes, and like how quickly have you seen
No,
people's
yeah.
pressure go down and results go up? And like, because I think that when I first heard about the system and as I've grown in my financial intelligence and management over the years, typically when I first hear about something, it feels like it's going to be a ton of work or super hard or super
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
But that really hasn't been my experience when I actually implement processes. So for you, what have you seen with the folks that you work with on that front?
Well, and I do think some of it in order to have a good physically fit body, it takes a ton of work, ton of discipline,
Yeah,
and a you actually are breaking down your body, right? You're ripping it apart to build
yeah,
it. And a lot of times we want the quick fixes without the effort, right? What I like about the Profit First system and the infinite banking system is it's just little efforts that you're doing, right? Because I started my life insurance policy for where I just bought a commercial real estate building, but I started that in 2013 when I could only do $400 a month, right? That was a lot, right? Um, and I started then, and I even talked to my accountant the other day. He's like, "Man, I can't believe you guys are doing this." I said, "It started when I met you way back in 2013,
Yeah.
right?" And not to underestimate the small little actions that are taking place, the 1% adjustments, as I call it.
Yeah.
Those 1% adjustments over time add up. And so, what I think is the challenge is in our TikTok world and Instagram, we want to see the um, Ferrari tomorrow when we
Yeah.
didn't even do any work for it, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think that most business owners, they're comparing themselves to a business that's been around for a long time. I've uh, have a friend, you probably know him, Perry Marshall,
Yep.
right? And Perry, I'm like, he's got a lot of information, came out in the '80s or whatever. But I can't say I'm this guru at marketing or this. Whenever he started years ago, he's a adult business, where mine is a 4-year-old business, right? Um, and those are some things I just think about a lot of times in business and growing. There's a lot of wiping butts that you have to deal with, right? That's kind of like a baby,
Yeah.
and you really don't want to do that. Like no one really wants to do that, but
Yeah.
it's part of the growth of the business. And as you build, Profit First just tells me, oh, I have enough in the OpEx to hire a staff person
Yeah.
and just build it. And I think that again, I've had clients that have money in their house. We've done a cash out refi, right? Depending on the interest rates, maybe not right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, Cash out refi, put it into a life insurance policy, take out a loan, take out all of their high interest credit cards, right? To then have a smoother process as they grow their business
Yeah.
versus 22% or whatever. Cause it's, again, it's all one wallet. I don't care if
Yeah.
it's personal business, it's all one wallet. How do we
Yeah.
best position those wallets to benefit you?
Yeah. Yeah, I like what you shared. It's definitely for me, there's definitely when I put the system in place and when I've done some of these things, it's allowed me to have some things I feel immediate pressure relief because I know that I'm headed the right direction. And then other pieces, like you said, it is just that 1% adjustment and
Mm-hmm.
and change, which makes it easier to implement instead of thinking, I have to overhaul top to bottom everything today, that would likely break your business and break your
Yep.
personal finance if you do it recklessly. But if you just make those little adjustments, then it's a lot easier. It's a lot more effortless. But you have that compounding interest, literally, in some of the things you're doing. But also, you just have
Yeah.
that compounding effect of being able to shift and turn the ship and get back on track with the way you're going. And I so many entrepreneurs like have learned this specific skill or know enough about what they're doing to sell that service or product, but they haven't really invested the same amount of effort or time in their financial intelligence. And you can't
Mm-hmm.
scale a business without really having enough financial intelligence and the right support people around you, a good attorney, a good
Yep.
CPA, a good financial advisor. All of those things, lead to you having a really strong team there instead of thinking you can tackle it all on your own.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I definitely think it's something that's just really really important to be aware of as entrepreneurs because any area where we don't invest in ourselves and educate ourselves and just like you were saying, great example of like if you don't take care of your body, you're not going to be a great entrepreneur anymore than if you don't take care of your finances. You're
Yep.
going to have different problems but the same kind of concept. So yeah, I think it's such an important area. And I think at least the way I grew up, there just wasn't a lot of financial education, and
Yep.
there there was extremism one way or the other. Overly conservative on never spending anything, which is, in my opinion, just as foolish as spending all your money, because
Yep.
you're not going to achieve what you want. But as I've walked through this process and gone through all the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, the more I invest, the two areas that always level me up is my self care is always what will help me break to the next level, as well as my financial management
Mhm.
intelligence and just financial health, because everything gets a lot easier. And it's easy. It's been easy for me, and I've seen clients go through this season too. It's been easy for me to like not realize that I'm building a ton of pressure on
Yeah.
myself from financial issues and just keep trying to ignore it or push through it. But as soon as you make that shift to either right size your team or raise your prices or put it the right financial management framework in, everything opens up again, and it's so much easier to operate,
Yeah.
fluidly and successfully and be in flow as an entrepreneur. So I think what you're doing is super important. And I encourage everybody to reach out to you, and really just take the first steps, because if you don't know what you don't know, that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you sit there, then it is your fault.
Yeah. Well,
And
and I do think it's like having a good I'm the safety, right? I think I'm the safe money guy. That's why I love Profit First. I
yep,
love infinite banking is because it builds some stability. Your biggest risk is you.
yeah,
The Wall Street model is broken. We see that like as the market has gone up and to the right theoretically.
yeah,
How's that working out for most people,
yeah,
right? And I'm like, man, our system is telling us a lie. And what I really think about is again reverse engineering, asking the goals,
yeah,
right? I It's amazing how many people all their goal is to go to Disney World and spend it. Apparently,
yeah,
but I've thought about this acronym. I call it well, we have the still method, but chaos is the reverse, and it's confusing, haphazard,
yeah,
anxious, overwhelming, and stressful. And some
yeah,
people love that in their business. I'm like, well, the most profitable businesses are the ones that are not confusing, haphazard, anxious, overwhelming, and stressful.
yeah,
The best leaders are the ones that, hey, they have a cool head, right? But the reverse of chaos is still set your sights, track your in and out, inspect your progress, look for 1% adjustments, and live deliberately. Those is what I think is what is missing in our world, and why we're so crazy is because we're in chaos, not still. And want more and more business owners, specifically, to be in that almost flow state of still. So then to be able to weather the storms of a stupid roof flood issue
yep,
or COVID or I don't know,
whatever.
aliens coming down tomorrow. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know. Something's going to happen tomorrow. I
right.
mean, it'll be in Market Watch, and then they'll blame aliens. Uh, you know, I watch the news. That's what we thrive on. I mean, you're in marketing. We
Yep,
we love those kind of things. That's called clickbait.
yep,
Um,
yeah,
anyway, I just think for most people, we need to like be the writer, not the um, one that's being influenced by.
yeah, yeah. I agree, and you're right. There's definitely, no matter what season you're in business, there's always going to be a storm coming, and if you have no plan to weather that, then
Hmm.
talk about stress upon stress, because you're worried about what could happen, or you're worried it could be as bad as the last time. But if you don't have your still framework there in that plan, then I agree. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be painful,
Yeah,
and in some senses, there's really no point in working for yourself if you don't
yeah,
invest the time and effort to really have financial intelligence and freedom as well. So
yeah. The
it's
funny thing is, that was not my second flood or first flood. When I moved here, in Cincinnati, my basement flooded, and that but person who runs an entrepreneurship group is like, "How are you so like not stressed out about this?"
yeah,
And I was like, "Well, this has happened before, and
yep,
we'll overcome it. It's fine.
yep,
It doesn't mean it doesn't suck,
right,
but anyway."
yeah, yeah. That's what I tell people. The universe gives us the gift of adversity, and it's up to us what we're going to do with it. And if you
Hmm.
learn from those lessons of adversity. The future ones just really aren't that scary because you know how to push through it, and you have process and support in place.
Yeah.
But if you don't take time to reflect and learn and change from from the floods that come your way, then that's a totally different problem. You are going to suffer all the time. So
Yeah. And we're either going to be victims, and the world is all about victims right now. I feel like everybody plays the victim card,
yeah,
and in politics or in any of that. I'm like, I'm not in that world. I don't want to be in that world.
yeah,
There's a difference, and I want to have control. That's why I love infinite banking and profit first, is because you know I don't have to be a victim. We don't. None of us have to be in business, but things do happen to us.
right.
But you don't have to stay there.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you have a great resource that you put together, Brandon, that I'm going to throw up in the comments here, and we'll put in the show description when this goes out again, and share it on the email list and everything like that. But tell us about this report and what people can use this for.
Yeah, it's a how to what's the title? You know the title. Um, I've even forgot how to build wealth outside of a W-2, I believe is the
Yep,
title
5
of it.
simple steps to secure
No.
your financial future outside of W-2.
Yeah. So yeah, so really, I think a lot of times in business, uh, I was in a small group of a men's small group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of them work for P&G, and they have the company match and all of this stuff. And I'm like, that's not me.
Yeah.
I am the company match. I have to figure out my own plan for retirement, my own plan for future. Even our businesses will pivot and change over time. So, how do you overcome that? How do you understand the cash flow game, as
Mm-hmm.
Robert Kiyosaki does? So we've thought about the debtor saver staircase, uh, meaning like how do I become a wealth accumulator?
Mm-hmm.
How have I done this and teach others? And it's using this infinite banking strategy and profit first. And really, it's just some steps that we've taken to build this because it didn't happen overnight. I didn't have a rich relative that helped me start the coffee shop. I did it with uh, a, a, my head and credit cards, which I don't recommend either, but
Yeah.
at least not that way. And
Yeah.
so understanding that system and realizing again, we're all in the financial services industry in some fashion. You
Yeah.
need to at least understand it a little bit. Don't tell me as a business owner, I love making money, but I don't like numbers.
Yeah.
That's like stupid, because it's all about the numbers when it comes to marketing, when it comes to finance, and just this helps build the framework with a lot of good questions there. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Terrific. Well, thank you.
so
Yeah.
download the report. You're gonna love it. It's
Yeah,
18
absolutely.
pages. It's really good. It's like a little mini book.
Awesome. So yeah, so everybody who's listening to the audio version, you can go to wealthwisdomfp.com/report, and that's where you can get Brandon's report there. I highly encourage you to do that, and you can connect with Brandon on social media or anywhere else, but that'll take you to his site as well. I really appreciate you being on today, Brandon. This was a really valuable conversation, and I encourage everybody to even consider re-listening to this. Like, spark some ideas for yourself. Think about how you can take that first step or make that next 1% change, because when we do that, that's when we actually have the ability to have the business we want, to have the freedom of time and money that we signed up for when we decided that we wanted to be entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for being on, Brandon, and we'll definitely have you back in the future to get some updates on what you're working on. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. It's fun.
Thank you.